Hey everyone. This is just a quick little intro into the homeless shelter unit project. Um, when we come in here, it's right now it's labeled 2.4 homeless shelter unit project. Again, this is a unit project for unit 2. This is going to be due at the end of the quarter. This is going to be, at least for the year of 2020, this is going to be our last quarter 1 grade. All right, so we've already had one unit project, which was the chairs project. Now we're moving into the homeless shelter unit project. So between those two projects, it's going to make up 30% total of your quarter grade for quarter 1. So as we move into this here, there's a few things that I want everybody to recognize. First of all the information that we need to start with at least is found right here in the assignment. Again, for 2020, this is due on November 10th at 4 p.m. Okay, so it's not at midnight. It's basically at the end of the day on November 10th. I'm making this like a very hard deadline because I actually have grades due that Friday, Friday the 13th. So I need to get these assignments in on the 10th so that I can grade them and get them turned around as a Unit 1 grade. All right, so just like this says here, you're going to see the Google Doc file named Homeless Shelter Design Brief. That's this one here for starting instructions. Review all materials here, including the rubric for information about the project. So we'll come into the rubric here in a second, but we're going to start with this here. So this is the start point for the instructions. It's not all of the instructions for this. I've given you more instructions elsewhere, but this is the start point to begin with. So first and foremost, the problem statement for this design activity. According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, close to 568,000 people experienced homelessness on a single night in January 2019. Over 200,000 of those people were unsheltered, meaning they weren't in like a shelter of any sort. They were on the streets. And, you know, this is obviously like a horrible tragedy, and it's just getting worse as housing costs go up in the country and as, unfortunately, things like the coronavirus affect so many people. This is a group project, so as a group of designers, you're being tasked with developing an affordable housing solution for the unsheltered homeless population. So again, you're going to be designing some sort of a housing solution, primarily something that maybe they can like sleep in at night to keep them warm for the homeless, right? So within here too, we start to list things like criterion constraints. Unit design partners are required to develop more criterion constraints as the project evolves, but everyone must meet these minimum criterion constraints, right? So again, this is just a minimum. This isn't everything. So your shelter must be designed to shelter 1 adult. It must keep a person dry, and it also must keep a person warm for conditions as cold as 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, when we're talking about warm, you know, when you're talking about living on the streets, warm isn't necessarily what we consider warm to be at the house. I would say that if you're able to keep this shelter to somewhere in like the 50-degree range, even if it's like 50 exactly, that's a pretty good place to start, right? And of course, our bodies produce heat. So if we're able to like insulate these structures here, this is going to help out quite a bit. Again, we're going to shelter one adult, and we need to have our own criteria or adding our own criteria to this list. You have to have a minimum of 2 extra. Okay, that's just a minimum, not a maximum. More is better. The more pointed you make your criteria and your constraints, the more easily you come to a conclusion for your total project. So the constraints here, the total cost of the shelter must be $150 or less. And you're going to add your own constraints at a minimum of 2. And again, that's just a minimum. More is better. Because again, the more constraints we have, the more criteria we have, it like limits our design decisions, which a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want it to limit my decisions. But honestly, limits are a good thing here, because what limits are doing is they're really pointing us in the direction of our final project. All right? So they're gonna really help direct us. Those limits are a directing factor that should really help. So I have my directions here. Group assignments are listed below. I'm going to get into group assignments and where you're going to find them. Each group has a combination of in-person and remote members. In-person members should move to adjacent tables while maintaining social distancing. Okay, so in the classroom, you can sit in tables next to one another. And then they're going to Zoom with their remote cohort. For those of us, when we're all remote, then we'll just be Zooming between us. So the next thing I'm going to show you here is a slideshow named Homeless Shelter Design Brief. That's going to be the thing that actually gets turned into me. I have not created a copy of that for every student. One member is going to make a copy of that file, and they're going to share that with the other group members, and they're also going to share it with me, the teacher. You're going to follow the directions at the bottom of each slide for specific information and requirements for that slide. And you're going to follow and review the slideshow named number 2, design process, which again is the same thing that we talked about in class, the design process slideshow. That's going to include some more information on each step, and also really reflect on the IDEO video for inspiration on this process. The IDEO video and the design process that we learn are basically one and the same, all right? So, I mean, you can really take that experience that you've kind of seen and learned from the professionals and apply it to your project here, you know. And again, they were like creating their own criteria and constraints as they were realizing more about the problem. They were brainstorming like tons of ideas. They were trying to like put those together to come up with best solutions. They were analyzing their models, and then they improved upon their models, and then they created their final design. And then communicated that design, all right, which is going to be the same thing that we're going through here. It's really, really important that everybody reviews the grading rubric so that everybody knows like how they're going to be assessed. So let's take a look at the slideshow itself, which is right here. And again, if someone in your group hasn't already made a copy of this, you're going to want to, and then from that copy, you're going to share that with the other members in your group, and you're going to share it with me. Once again, on the bottom of this slideshow, there are directions for each individual theme, or each individual slide, okay? So for this one here, this is just simply the title slide. You just need to include your names, okay? So all the names of the people in your group, and change the theme of the slide to enhance your presentation, okay? So you're gonna go through, so it's under slide, and it's gonna be change theme. And then you can come over here and you can like edit the way that the whole system comes out. And you know, again, so it looks a little bit better for your presentation, okay? So that's an easy slide there. Then we move into like the first step of the design process, which is identifying the problem. So we're going to design a homeless shelter to protect a person from the elements, all right? So again, the criteria that I've already developed for you are within here. Must keep a person dry, must keep a person warm for conditions as cold as 10 degrees, and it must be designed to hold 1 adult. You're going to add more criteria here. Constraints. Total cost of the shelter must be $150 or less. You're going to add more constraints here. And again, down below it says here, edit the problem statement to match your specific project. So if you change your the problem statement a little bit, you should edit that. More importantly here, you're going to be adding criteria and constraints, okay? You need to add 2 more of each. Okay, so that's going to be in your criteria and your constraints here. Brainstorming. So this is step number 2, and then we also have research, which I really think that these 2 things are like one and the same to some degree. I think that research helps drive brainstorming. I also think that brainstorming helps to drive research. Like for this instance, like you might realize when you're brainstorming that you need a waterproof material to keep your person dry. Then maybe you come back and you start researching what type of materials out there are waterproof and like what you can use for that. And then on the flip side of that, you might be researching and realize that like something is necessary for this shelter that you didn't think about before, and that might drive your brainstorming process further as well. You're going to insert sketches of individual details that come up that might solve your criteria. You can put your initials and your title underneath each sketch. Duplicate the slide if more space is required. You're in groups of 3 or 4 for this assignment. I'm really expecting underneath brainstorming like 15 plus ideas. Like I'm really expecting like a lot of brainstorming, a lot of research. I think that all of these like initial steps are so important to the design process because again, they really point you in the right direction. So just remember, more ideas is always better than less ideas. If you have to duplicate your slide, you can simply right-click on Brainstorm or any slide for that matter, and you can say duplicate slide, and it will create like a whole nother slide that you can add more information to. So that's Brainstorm. Research here, list the sources and the major themes that you've learned from each source. So I'm going to be requesting or requiring a minimum of 3 sources. Again, more than a minimum is better than just a minimum, but it is a minimum of 3 resources. You can feel free to add text and photos and any other information that you find relevant to this project. You can also duplicate the slide if more space is required, which it probably will be. So again, I'm looking for a list of major or of sources. It doesn't have to be in an MLA format. It doesn't have to be in like works cited. Honestly, like a website that you got the information from, or if it's a book, like the title and the author. If it's a magazine, the title of the magazine, the month of the magazine, and the name of the article. Like anything that I can go back through and like check your stuff would be super helpful. But really what I'm looking for here is the major themes that you've learned from each source. And again, maybe one of these sources is about the homeless population. Maybe one of these sources is more like upon materials to help keep people dry. Maybe it's about insulation. Maybe it's about like ventilation. It could be about like all sorts of different things involved in this project. And realistically, you want to give me that like length that you're getting information from. And again, maybe some pictures and like what major themes are you pulling away? Like, I just don't want to see like information from like, let's say, find home building about insulation. All right. I want you to not only give me that link, but I want you to also like explain to me like from that article that you've read, what is it that you're going to try and be incorporating into your project, or what do you think is really important to your project as you move forward? Again, you might need to duplicate this slide. So for the first week here, I'm expecting that junior group members are really nailing out these first 3 slides really like hard, because I think that these again are going to be the thing that develop everything else. So by Friday, I'm kind of expecting that every single group has a really great problem defined with all of your criteria and your constraints. I'm expecting that you have a lot of brainstorming ideas. This could be like in sketches or in text. And then lastly, I'm expecting that you are going to have all your research done and have those sources and like your major takeaways from those sources. Next week, we're going to be working on developing ideas, choosing our best idea, and creating a model or prototype. And at the same time that we're creating our model and prototype, we're also going to be finishing up like our final concept sketch. And our final concept sketch, like while somebody's drawing that, the other person's making their model. And then, after that fact, we're going to be testing and evaluating. So like in a matter of trying to keep the project moving smoother and give everybody something to do, and also to make it faster, we're going to do step 6, and step 8 at the same time. And then in order to like improve upon your design and show improvements, you're simply going to list the improvements that you've added after you've created your model here on the left, you know, and also in your final concept sketch, it's going to be drawn in 3D. It has to have proper shape, proportions, colors, and letters. When you test and evaluate, you're going to answer these questions. And again, like all of this stuff is answered or is explained down below here. Lastly, again, this is going to be due Tuesday of the following week. So this is like a full 2-week project, basically. You're going to share this whole document is about communicating your results. So you're going to place an image of your model on the left. You're going to place your final concept sketch on the right. And we're basically going to leave it at that. Okay, so as far as grading is concerned, grading is found here. We have mastery level for which I'll run through all of these. So we have our unit project. So first is identify the problem, right? Which comes from the identify the problem slide. You have your criterion constraints encompass the complete and overall design. 5 criteria and 5 constraints are listed in total. Brainstorming, again, the mastery level of brainstorming, multiple solutions to the problem are listed and sketched with proper notation and ideation. All right, so I'm looking again for lots and lots of sketches with brainstorming. And I'm looking for how they're going to be like listed, and I'm really looking for like things that are going to, again, individual components for brainstorming that you can later add to like a cohesive component. So you can take the best of each brainstormed idea and combine it together later on. Research, 3 or more sources are listed, text and photos are incorporated that are relevant to the topic, okay? So again, relevant to the topic, showing how that relevance is important to your project itself. Develop ideas. Multiple solutions have been posted and incorporated. Sketches resemble thought out solutions and lettering is in use, okay? So all of your notes for your developed ideas are going to be lettered. Remember, that's like all capital letters. They stay within. Lettering is, you know, found in Unit 1. I think it was like 1.7 or 1.8. So you can review that lettering practice. Sketches use notation to further communicate ideas, all right? So again, lettered notes to further communicate like your concepts. Then you're going to choose your best idea. So again, for that slide, I'm looking for an image of your final solution is posted with strengths, optimization, trade-offs, and weaknesses that resemble a well thought out, balanced design. Then we move into model or prototype. Mastery for your model. Model represents final design using various materials to showcase the design aspects. Model is incorporated into your final solution. Modeling is going to be a little bit more important for this activity than it was a chair activity. I'm definitely looking for things that like resemble your materials. I'm looking for the proportions to be right. And I'm looking for like a fair amount of detail to be incorporated within this model here. Testing and evaluation. Questions of evaluation of your design are answered in regards to all design aspects and clear representation of research is present. So again, when we start looking at your evaluation, I'm going to be looking at things like, are you meeting your criterion constraints? Are you using like good materials? Are you utilizing the things that you have researched and like built that into like your idea to make sure that everything is coherent and that like you're testing like your very best solution that you can and that you're getting as much information from that model and from that testing that you possibly can, like visualizing it. And then your approved ideas, a list of well thought out improvements are listed. Photo, or in our case, a scanned like image of the final solution. Sketch is present. Sketch is in proportion and includes color to denote different materials. Okay, so again, well done sketch, coloring, materials, and making this thing like the best that it possibly can be. And then lastly, communicate results. Again, a really simple slide there because the whole thing is communicating your results. you're simply going to copy the picture of your model and the picture of your final sketch, and you're going to drop them into that last slide there. That should be like an easy 4 out of 4 points. All right. So although the 5 chairs project was graded out of 100 points, and this project is only graded out of 36 points, it's still going to be a basic percentage. So like if you were to get, let's say, like a 35 out of 36, that roughly translates to a 97%. So that, you know, as you're going through this, like, don't think that just because this is rated out of 36 and not 100 that it's worth less than the 5 chairs project. It's ultimately worth the same. This is worth 15% of your unit grade. The 5 chairs was worth 15%, and you add those two things up and you get the complete 30% for the unit projects for the quarter grade. So again, we have all that there. I have a reference, a resource that maybe you could start pulling some information from that pertains to your project. I have the design process in here, which again just goes through all of the steps of the design process, gives you a little bit more information on each one than what's included within here. You know, and I am expecting that everybody is like pulling, you know, resources from different places and working together. The other thing that's really important here is that it is a group project. So I'm not going to show any of the groups on this activities sheet here, but when you go to open this document up, there would load. Here we go. There are the instructions, and then there are the different periods. So you're simply going to select what period you're in, and that's going to tell you what group you're within. Part of this assignment is not only like the design process and like going through the design process, but honestly, part of this assignment is to try and get students to start communicating with one another. Students aren't really talking that much this year. Students don't know one another. And this is like a really great like opportunity to start to get to know at least a few of your classmates. I realize it's not like the whole class, but you guys can start to get to know one another. So I'm really hoping that when you're in your breakout groups that you turn your cameras on. I'm hoping that your microphones are on and that you guys are communicating and like building on the ideas of others and like working together to make this project the best that it possibly can be. Realistically here, groups are how design projects are built in real life. And I think it's going to be really important that you guys communicate in order to be successful within this project. So before I go here, the last thing that I guess that I'll leave you guys with is just stay on topic and keep like pushing forward here. 2 weeks to do this project is plenty of time, but there's a lot to do across those 2 weeks. So we don't have time to be wasting along the way. We need to, like, again, really concentrate at the beginning of this process. We're going to spend a little bit more time on that so that the rest of this process is faster. You guys might also need to work on other ways to communicate outside of class, like Google Meet, or maybe just emailing, or maybe just communicating across like the slideshow document between one another. But I really think that it's important, again, that everybody's like doing their own part within this project. Everybody needs to pull their own weight, and that everybody is really like communicating what is being done where, so that when you bring it together, you're all doing the very best that you can. All right. I hope that this video here has helped you guys out. If you have any questions, you can refer back to this, and I'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Bye-bye.